Thank you for your kind introduction. Thank you, conference organizers for having me this morning. My name is Kishi. I'm a DOJ team leader for Project Stellar, a joint research project between European Central Bank and Bank of Japan on DLT. An American humorist once quipped, there have been three great inventions since the beginning of time: fire, the wheel, and central banking. And central banking part, of course, seems to be an exaggeration, to say the least. But it's an honor for me to take part in this important conference, gathering professionals leading innovations in blockchain technology. So let me begin with the purpose of Project Stellar. This is to deepen the knowledge about DLT and find room, if any, for improving our own infrastructure by adopting new technology. And also to contribute to the ongoing debate with experimental work we do and conceptual studies exploring DLT opportunities and challenges for financial market infrastructure. FMI's financial market infrastructure would include central bank large value funds transfer system, let's say operated by People's Bank of China, Bank of Japan, or European Central Bank. The analysis and experiments we do are not geared towards replacing or complementing existing arrangements. We have completed the third phase of the project. The first phase was launched in December 2016 and ended in September 2017. And the project replicated liquidity saving mechanisms typically installed within the large value fund transfer system. And that's quantitative results of tests both on efficiency and safety aspects. The first of its kind at the time of publication. The second phase finished in March last year. It dealt with applicability of DLT to secure the delivery versus payments. The third phase finished June this year. The use case was synchronized cross-border payments. Platform we used for the experiments was Hyperledger Fabric, version 0.6.1 in phase 1. We dealt with Coder Elements Fabric in phase 2 to see the difference of the platforms. For phase 3, we used Fabric version 1.2.1. The choice of the platform was made mainly due to the availability of documents and real use cases applied. The motivation for phase 3. Cross-border payments involve various entities across multiple jurisdictions. They are often characterized as slow and costly when compared to the domestic payments. While initiatives exist that address these current inefficiencies of cross-border payments, for example, Swift GPI, the safety aspects of transactions across payment ledgers remain a challenge. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that sender wants to send 1 million yen. Sender in euro area wants to send 100 million yen to a receiver in Japan. If entity B, who is the correspondent bank, fails after the first leg of the transfer is complete, which is the 1 million euro transfer from A to B. But before the second leg of the transfer is complete, entity A faces the loss of its funds. This risk can be mitigated if the payments of the two legs are synchronized, for example, using hash time lock contracts. So we looked at this use case. Cross-border payment is composed of a chain of building blocks shown in the dotted box that consists of payer, payee, well, it's the participants of the cross-border chain, ledger, and payment methods. Payment methods are distinguished by whether the settlement is made immediately after the instruction or not. We wanted to focus on the safety of the payment methods. So, approach taken in phase 3. We want to focus on the safety aspects of the transaction of cross-border transaction payments across ledgers. And so what are the characteristics of the safe payment methods? We wanted to look at the payment methods using HDLC, hash time lock contract, or methods not dependent upon HDLC. So this is the first chunk of our work we did. After we found some safety methods, we wanted to see how the transfer, cross-ledger transfers between different types of ledgers. For example, ledgers between centralized and DLT. Of course, we saw DLT transfers between DLT ledgers through experiments. Now, as I mentioned, built upon phase 2, in phase 3 also uses hash time lock contracts to synchronize multiple payments and assess whether the credit risks involved in transactions across multiple ledgers can be mitigated. Foreign exchange risk or operational risks are out of scope at this time. HDLC consists of a cryptographic hash function and time lock function. And when I say cryptographic hash function, is H, where Y equal HX, X being pre-image and Y being hash value. It's extremely difficult to find X from Y. Payment methods not dependent upon HDLC are considered. This is an expansion from as compared with phase 2. When we then assess safety of 5 payment methods, when we say safe payment methods, it means that if the transaction parties who completely satisfy the responsibilities, they are not exposed to risk of loss. And if that's the case, such payment method is deemed safe. So these are the 5 payment methods assessed in phase 3. On the horizontal line, you see whether the transactions are made on ledger or off ledger, whether the funds to be transferred are locked, and whether there's an enforcement mechanism of conditional payment or not, and whether there's a specific ledger requirement. And we find 3 payment methods, which are on-ledger escrow using HDLC, third-party escrow, conditional payment channels with HDLC, are the safe payment methods. They have something in common, which is that they have enforcement mechanism for conditional payment. In case of on-ledger escrow using HDLC and conditional payment channel with HDLC, enforcement is made by the ledger. In case of third-party escrow, this enforcement is done by third party. So of the 3 payment methods, with enforcement mechanism ensures safe cross-border payments. The analysis on safety presumes 2 things. Escrow's funds are kept safe, meaning isolated from the bankruptcy risk of payer. 2, the participants and ledgers have sufficient processing capabilities. So let me get into the detail of how the safe payment methods work, taking on ledger escrow using HDLC. We have preparation phase and execution phase. The first step in the preparation phase, the receiver produces the pre-image and its hash value. The receiver informs the sender of the hash value and timeout. Let's say 3 p.m. today. That's the first step. And the second step, the sender requests ledger 1 to escrow 1 million euro. The sender informs both the connector and the ledger 1 of hash value and timeout. Let's say 5 p.m. today. Same will happen between the connector and ledger 2. Connector and the receiver. The connector requests ledger 2 to escrow 100 million yen. And the connector also informs both the receipt and the ledger, hash value and timeout. Let's say 1 p.m. today. So the preparation is made. Then we move on to the execution phase. If the receiver presents the pre-image before 1 p.m. to ledger 2, the escrow funds will be released to the receiver. The connector then presents the pre-image by 5 o'clock. The escrow fund at the ledger 1 will be released to the connector. So this is the feature of synchronized and safe payment methods. Well, the timing exists, timing lag exists between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. The two legs of payments are executed safely because the funds are escrowed on the ledgers, isolating the funds from the risk of bankruptcy of the payer. Now, let me move on to the payment method with poor safety features, which is a trust line. They have 3 phases. In the setup phase, they promise that the payer and payee promise agree to a maximum amount that they can be sent without settlement. The funds are not escrowed at this point. During the state update phase, the payee makes a payment. The payer promises the payee to make payment if the payee presents the pre-image. Before the maximum limit is reached, the settlement phase comes in. So the funds are settled. Why is this a very poor payment method? Because the payer's funds are not escrowed during this process. So if the payer defaults before the settlement phase, the payee cannot receive the promised amount of money. Now we saw safe payment methods and unsafe payment methods. To assess the safety of the payment methods, we looked into this default scenario. So the preparation is made, assuming the preparation is made between the parties. Now we are getting into the execution phase. After the execution between the receiver and the connector is made, let's say before the execution between connector 1 and 2 is processed, connector 1 defaults. If there's a risk that connector 2 cannot receive the promised funds, depending upon the payment methods using between connector 1 and 2. Under the default scenario and assuming safe payment methods between the parties are used along the payment chain, including connector 1 and 2, connector 2 would be able to receive funds from connector 1 because the funds are escrowed already. So, we found the 3 safe payment methods, and we wanted to see through the experiments how this works between different types of ledgers. We tested several patterns of synchronized settlement with successful results. For the experimentation, we used Interledger.js, was adopted for open source implementation. IoT version 3, which is an older version, was adopted to implement a centralized ledger, we use the Firebell's ledger as a centralized ledger. Project Stellar engineers newly implemented our deep plugin for Hyperledger Fabric. And this gives you an example of experiment setup for cross-platform environment experiment. So cross-platform meaning use Hyperledger Fabric for first leg, and Firebell's ledger, which is a legacy ledger for the second leg, with successful results. So the main results of the 5 methods assessed in phase 3, payment methods with enforcement mechanism ensure safety between the parties. And experimentation, the experimentation proved that the technical feasibility of synchronized settlement between different types of ledgers, including settlement between PLP and decentralized ledger. From a technical perspective, the safety of today's cross-border payment could potentially be improved by using payment methods that synchronize payments and log funds along the payment chain. It should be noted, however, that for actual implementation, legal and compliance issues, maturity of technology, cost-benefit analysis, that should be made for the possible implementation. Thank you very much for your attention.